In the fog-choked streets of 1830s London, where the Thames carried the stench of rot and the cries of the poor echoed through alleys, the city's underbelly thrived on despair. Smoke from factory chimneys mingled with the haze, casting a grey pallor over the cobblestones, while the clatter of horse carts and the shouts of vendors filled the air. Among the forgotten was Rose Harper, a 17-year-old with matted auburn hair and eyes that held a flicker of defiance, despite her hollow cheeks. She lived in a crumbling tenement in Whitechapel, her parents long dead from typhus, her younger siblings clinging to life on scraps she scavenged. Hunger gnawed at her every day, her hands trembling as she mended torn clothes for pennies, her dreams buried under the weight of survival. One bitter morning, driven by the sight of her brother's sunken eyes, Rose stole a loaf of bread from a market stall, her heart pounding as she slipped it under her shawl, her steps quick through the crowd. Her theft did not go unnoticed. A constable's whistle pierced the air, his boots heavy as he chased her through the alleys, her shawl trailing behind her like a flag of surrender. Rose was caught, her wrists bound with coarse rope, her pleas for mercy ignored as the crowd jeered, their voices a chorus of scorn. The magistrate's court was a cold, stone-walled chamber, its air thick with the scent of damp and wax, the judge's gavel a hammer of fate. Rose stood trembling, her tattered dress clinging to her thin frame, her voice a whisper as she begged for her siblings' sake. But mercy was a stranger in 1830s London, and the judge sentenced her to 6 months in Newgate prison, his words a death knell for a girl like her. Newgate loomed on the city's edge, its blackened walls a fortress of despair, its iron gates groaning as they swallowed her whole. The prison's stench hit her first, unwashed bodies, rotting straw, and the metallic tang of blood. Its corridors lit by flickering torches that cast shadows like specters on the stone. Rose was thrown into a cell with iron bars rusted by time, the floor slick with filth, the air heavy with the moans of the damned. Her cellmates were men, their eyes glinting with malice, their laughter a low growl as they watched her shrink into a corner. Women's rights were a distant dream in 1830s England, and female prisoners were rare, often housed with men in overcrowded jails, their vulnerability a cruel jest. The guard, a hulking man named Thomas Grigg, was the first to mark her. His face was pocked with scars, his breath sour with gin, his hands quick to grab as he shoved her against the wall on her first night, his voice a hiss as he demanded silence. Grigg's assault came under the cover of darkness, his weight crushing her, her cries muffled by the straw as the other prisoners listened, their silence a betrayal. She scratched at his arms, her nails drawing blood, but his fist silenced her, leaving her bruised and broken, her spirit a fragile thread in the prison's gloom. The days that followed were a descent into torment. Grigg withheld her rations, her daily bread replaced with moldy crusts, her water a trickle in a cracked cup, her stomach a hollow ache that gnawed at her strength. He beat her when she begged, his belt leaving welts on her back, her arms bruised purple from his grip. The male prisoners, a mix of thieves and murderers, saw her weakness as sport, their hands groping through the bars, their taunts a daily ritual as they called her filth, their laughter echoing through the stone corridors. One, a wiry man with a missing ear, threw slop at her, the rancid mess clinging to her dress, his jeers a blade in her fading resolve. Another pinned her arm through the bars, his grip a vice, his words a vile promise of worse to come. Rose learned to curl into herself, her knees drawn to her chest, her eyes fixed on a crack in the wall, her mind clinging to memories of her siblings' laughter. A faint light in the darkness. Weeks turned to months, and Rose's body withered under the prison's cruelty, her frame skeletal, her skin pale as ash, her auburn hair falling out in clumps. The cold seeped into her bones, the straw offering no warmth, the rats a constant menace as they nibbled at her toes in the night. Grigg's assaults continued, his cruelty a ritual she could not escape, her body a map of scars, her spirit a flicker that refused to die. She scratched her name into the cell wall with a broken spoon, her fingers bleeding, her mark a silent defiance against the prison's attempt to erase her. The male prisoners grew bolder, their harassment a storm she could not weather, one smashing her hand with a stolen brick when she pushed him away, her fingers swelling, her cries unheard. She dreamed of escape, her mind conjuring the streets of Whitechapel, but the iron bars were unyielding, the guards a wall of cruelty, her hope a ghost that slipped through her fingers. On a frost-bitten morning in her 5th month, as the prison bell tolled a mournful note, Rose's strength gave out. Grigg had beaten her the night before, his rage sparked by her refusal to look at him, his boot cracking her ribs, her breath a shallow rasp in the aftermath. The male prisoners had laughed, their taunts a chorus as they threw filth at her, her body too weak to rise from the straw. She lay there, her eyes fixed on the crack in the wall, her mind drifting to her siblings, her heart heavy with the knowledge that they'd never know her fate. Her breath slowed, her body still, the prison's cold claiming her as its own. The guards found her at dawn, her frame a husk, her name scratched into the stone, the only proof she'd ever been there. They buried her in an unmarked grave, her story swallowed by Newgate's shadows, her siblings left to starve in the tenements she'd fought to save. In 1830s London, women like Rose were voiceless, their suffering a footnote in a city that thrived on their despair. Newgate Prison stood as a monument to cruelty, its walls echoing with the cries of the forgotten, its legacy a stain on history's page. Rose's name on the cell wall faded with time, but whispers of her torment lingered, a ghostly reminder of a time when women's rights were a dream, and a girl's life was worth less than the bread she stole.